Hello and welcome to Gadget Joe, and today we're taking a look at a mechanical gaming RGB keyboard and an RGB mouse for just less than £45. Today we've got a video on the CM420. Now the CM420 is a product made by Marvo. Now those of you that are familiar with the Marvo name, they are the brand that also supplied the keyboards for the recent giveaway we did on the channel. They do a much cheaper version of this, which I will link in the description down below, so if you want to go check that out. But for what you get on here, you're getting a full mechanical keyboard and an RGB gaming mouse, and the best part about this is that you can pick them up for around £45. Marvo are pretty much known for offering what you would class as budget offerings. Now, it's hard to sort of depict what you mean by budget, because generally speaking, if you say to someone that you've got a budget keyboard or a budget mouse or a budget headset, anything like that, generally budget means really poor quality. And this is just not the case with Marvo products. Everything that I've had from them so far has been surprisingly well built and features some fantastic features inside the product. And it certainly doesn't fall under that stigma of low price means low quality. And we're going to take a look at this today to find out exactly what you get in the kit for less than £45 and see just how good it is. So to start with, I'm going to get it open and then I'm going to explain some of the specs of the keyboard and the mouse, and we'll go from there, and then I'll say how I found it at the end of the video. In terms of the box itself, it is typical Marvo. In fact, you can see one of the CM409s behind me, and they are very similar boxes. A black printed box with some nice bright colours, lots of RGB, definitely very appealing to probably more of a younger market or the gaming market. And there's lots of information on the box as well, so it's not just a cheap brown box that you'd probably get for typical low price products. On the back you have lots of information about the products included, so you've got the information about the keyboard, the mouse and anything else that you need to know on the back there. It does have a convenient little carry handle, which makes it really simple to transport. What I'm going to do now is get it open, see what you get in there, and then we'll go from that. What exactly does £45 get you in terms of a mechanical keyboard and mouse combo? Let's begin with a mouse pad. Now the mouse pad is, for the price point, a very substantial offering. I've seen mouse mats that are very similarly priced to the entire kit, but actually aren't made quite as nicely as this. It is a large one. It's not full kit desk length, so it is going to sit quite proud on your desk. It does come in at 750mm by 280mm, and it does sit at 3mm thick. It's really nice quality fabric on top. It's got that nice material so that everything slides straight across it with no resistance whatsoever, and you do have that quite aggressive Marvo Scorpion branding in red and white on the front, so it would sit perfectly on a gaming setup. What's more is you do have this nice lovely red stitching all the way around, and that does help it from fraying, so it helps prolong the life of the mouse mat. On the back of it as well, it does have like a rubber matting, and that helps to stop it from moving. So as you can see, you can move it around, but once it's in place, it just does not move. I cannot get that to move, which is fantastic. When you're in the middle of a game, you don't want a mouse mat that's going to be sliding all over the place every time you use it. So straight out of the box, the first thing that you get is the mouse mat, and it's already fantastic quality. You do then, of course, get the keyboard. The keyboard is a 104 key keyboard, and it is a full-size 100% keyboard. It does feature black mechanical switches. Now, they are not cherry switches, they are Jixion switches. They're just as good. The black switches that you get in this are linear switches, so they work quite similarly to red switches. Now, the only difference here is that the black switches that you get on this keyboard have a really strong spring on them, so that when you push them down, they have a really fast retention rate. They pop straight back up, and also they don't bottom out quite as hard as reds do, meaning that even though they are quite clunky, which is to be expected on a mechanical keyboard, it is much quieter than most other mechanical keyboards. It is plug and play. All you have to do is plug in the 1.5 meter length cable into your USB port. It is USB 2 because there are no USB pass-throughs or any other features on this keyboard. The design is absolutely fantastic. Considering its price point, you would definitely get away with almost claiming that it's a much more expensive keyboard, because it does have that really premium feel to it. It features a plastic housing on the bottom, which is quite common with most keyboards on the lower price points. It does have 2 rubber feet on the bottom. Would have been nice to see maybe some rubber feet put on these legs here, just for that extra bit of rigidity when it's in place. But generally speaking, I've been using this and had no issues with movement. So as long as you don't knock it from the back, you're generally quite okay. It does have a level of adjustment as well, but on the top of it, it's completely different to the bottom. That's because it features a nice single sheet of metal all the way across, which actually curves over at the edges and floats off at the ends on either end of the keyboard. It gives it that more premium feel and also gives it that really good level of strength and rigidity. Just makes every key press nice and easy. Now with those black switches, they do have a quite low bottom out rate, but with that metal plate on the top, it gives it a really strong feel. So when you're in the middle of a game and you're really banging down on them keys, you're not going to have any concerns about the structure moving. You do get a keycap puller included in the kit as well. So you can obviously get that on there and take the keycaps off to expose those switches. Now this is especially useful for maintaining the keyboard. If you want to take everything off and get it all cleaned down nice and thoroughly, get the vacuum on there, you can of course do that. Now a top tip for when you're doing that is remember where the keys are going. So just take a quick photo of the keyboard before you take all the keys off, because otherwise you're going to have a nightmare when it comes to putting everything back into place afterwards. But that's not the only reason that you can take the keycaps off. Obviously, as I mentioned before, these are Gypsum black switches. Now, the interesting thing to note here is these are almost clones of Cherry MX switches. So you can actually get away with switching them for some more expensive switches later on down the line if you do wish to. But personally, I don't think you're going to need to. If you're going to be looking at a keyboard to put loads of Cherry MX switches, by the time you've replaced them all, you might as well have just spent that little bit extra and got a keyboard with Cherry switches included. But it's good to know that when it comes to replacing them, you're not limited to just these black switches. What's more is, for the price point, you're getting a keyboard with mechanical switches and features like anti-ghosting and N-key rollover, so that if you do multiple presses, it will register them all perfectly fine, which is ideal for when you're doing high intensity, fast level gaming, or obviously typing on the keyboard itself. Overall, it is a fantastic build quality and a feature set, probably unbeatable really for the price point, considering you get a mouse too, which I'll touch upon very shortly. It is important to remember that this isn't addressable RGB. It is technically addressable RGB because you can control the different modes on the board by pressing the function key and clicking through these numbers that you see on here. They will then change the lighting modes on the keyboard, but it is limited to the colours that you see. What it is different coloured lighting zones, and they remain at those one colours, and as you flick through the lighting modes, it simply turns off the LEDs or displays them in certain variants and patterns to give it a nice effect. But with that said, it's still a very, very nice, impressive looking RGB lighting mode, and it definitely will sit in nicely with most setups. So those lighting zones really don't take away from the appeal of a product altogether. You do also get a wrist pad included. Now this is a plastic construction that does on the bottom feature 6 of those rubber feet that really do make it sort of stay exactly where it needs to be. As you can see, I cannot move that once it's in place. It is a nice solid build, and it does feature some nice cushioning with a faux leather effect on the top, so it looks nice and premium. One thing I will say that is not so much of a letdown, but it's a bit unusual, is the fact that it's actually slightly higher than the keyboard. So when I'm using it, there is a slight difference in heights. Now, it's not really affected me when I was using it. It's quite comfortable to use. It just seems a little bit unusual how it's slightly higher than the actual keyboard itself. Definitely not something that's going to be an issue, and when it's in place, it does look absolutely fantastic. It really does look like a much more expensive keyboard. Also, it would be nice to maybe see just the addition of a couple of magnets to just keep it into place, because there's been a couple of times when I've sort of knocked it out of place. But again, with those 6 feet on the bottom, it doesn't really move very far, and it's ideal, especially if you have some issues like carpal tunnel. Alternatively, this can help aid in the prevention of carpal tunnel, because it really does help elevate your wrist slightly so that you're not angled more like this as you're typing. Overall, it's a very nice addition. It looks fantastic, nice and comfortable, feels nice on your wrist, doesn't affect any usability of the keyboard whatsoever, even though it does slightly protrude the top here. A very nice addition nonetheless. Now, moving on to the mouse that you get included, and it is a very nice looking mouse. It does have a strong gaming aesthetic to it. The ergonomic shape of it means that it fits nicely in the hand, even for someone with large hands like me. It fits nice and comfortably. It does have those nice grips on the side, on either side, to really help get an extra grip on it, so that when you're using it, it does not move anywhere, obviously apart from where it's supposed to, because it's a mouse, but it doesn't fall out of your hand at all. It means that you can pick it up multiple times without fear of it slipping out in position. The rest of it is a nice, smooth, matte black plastic. Overall, it's a nice ergonomic design. It looks fantastic, and it does feature RGB as well. RGB displays on the scroll wheel underneath here and on the Scorpion logo at the bottom of the mouse, and then underneath it there's a strip going around in a U shape going here, which illuminates on the bottom of the mouse mat to give it a really nice, subtle but quite visually striking aesthetic. You cannot adjust the weight on these because, well, you wouldn't expect to on a mouse at this price point, but it is a nice, decent weight already. It doesn't feel too heavy, it doesn't feel too light, you're not throwing it around as you go along. It is nicely planted and well designed. It does have 7 switches altogether, one of them being the scroll wheel here that you can press down for a function, allowing you to scroll through your context, and obviously then below that there is a DPI button which you can flick through to go through different modes. That DPI button does allow you to flick through 6 different DPI settings, starting from 800, 1600, 2400, 3200, 4800 and 6400. All of them incredibly responsive when using them as well, so that you can really fine tune it to exactly how you want it. The RGB control underneath that does allow you to flick through the modes. Now, the RGB lighting on this isn't set in zones like it is on the keyboard. So one zone isn't just one colour, you can flick through different colours on this, but you can only change through the modes that are on the mouse. You cannot plug it into the computer and change the settings on the computer, but that's fine because it just looks fantastic as you go, and there are plenty of options straight out of the box. Now, the cable is a 1.5 meter length cable, just like the keyboard. This one, however, rather than just being a simple plastic coating, this one does feature a braided coating, which is really nice to see. Now, probably you could have got away with getting that on the keyboard as well, but considering this moves around a lot more than the keyboard will ever do, the keyboard generally stays in one place. So maybe move it slightly to the other side of a desk, but generally speaking, the mouse is constantly moving, so it's going to need something that's hard wearing, and this is definitely something that is hard wearing. It feels nice and sturdy. It's really well made. It doesn't look like it's going to fray very quickly, and definitely a welcome addition to the mouse. You do also have those 2 function buttons on this side, which can be assigned to different macros on your computer. So if you're gaming quite a lot and you want to do it, you can change the settings to maybe say reload your gun or shift gears, and if you're driving, anything like that. Alternatively, if you're doing something like what I would do, and that's like editing, this is ideal because you can then set different macros. I would use it to maybe do cut and select or snip or remove, anything like that. These are ideal for settings. So overall, a very feature-rich mouse. It is a fantastic little design. Again, I've got large, big sausage fingers and they grip it really nice and well. You probably can get away with using it in your left hand as well because of that ergonomic design. It is pretty straight down. But you're going to have to remember the fact that you're going to have to change your settings on the computer, and then bear in mind that the function keys will then be needing to be used by your little finger, so it's not the most ergonomic for that, so it is probably most suited to a right-hand user. And that's pretty much it. That's my review of the Marvo Scorpion Gaming CM420 3-in-1, although you could technically argue it's a 4-in-1 because you get this wrist pad as well, but I suppose technically that's part of a keyboard. But it's a 3-in-1 kit with a mechanical keyboard and a programmable mouse, all for under £45. It is an absolute steal. Combine that with the fact that it's a mechanical keyboard. Those Jixian black switches in there are absolutely fantastic. You're basically getting the same performance as a cherry red switch. You have a very similar feel to it when you're typing, except it's much quieter and the retention rate is much quicker because of that stronger spring. It springs up much quicker, which is ideal if you are a fast-paced gamer or you're playing MMOs or stuff like that and you need that response time so that you can really bash down on the keys and get the most performance out of the keyboard. to in turn obviously get the most performance out of your game. The ability to be able to switch those keys out for a cherry switch is also a fantastic little feature. The RGB lighting looks absolutely phenomenal, and obviously you've got that programmable mouse, which also is RGB, and it sits in just nicely with a high quality mouse pad, which really does feel much more premium for the price point. I just don't think you can get anything on the market that is just as good as this for their price point. Now obviously you can spend £100 plus on getting something slightly higher performing, or with options such as USB pass-through or extra macros on the top. Alternatively, you can get mice with adjustable weights on them so that you can get it exactly how you want. But I don't really think you need to. If you're just after a gaming keyboard that's responsive, that's nice to type on, it feels nice and sturdy, looks the part, and also can be basically dismantled, disassembled and maintained, you're not going to get any better than this. And for that reason alone, this CM420 by Marvo gets a massive 2 thumbs up from me, and also the Gadget Joe Best Performance for Value Award. It is definitely something that I would strongly recommend. I will leave a link in the description down below as to where you can get one. They are currently around £40 to £45. Depending on where you go, you can pick them up quite cheap as well. But generally speaking, everything you get for £40 to £45, it's a no-brainer. If you're after a gaming keyboard, you don't want to break the bank, you don't want to spend an absolute fortune, or you're just wanting to get a gift for someone or a gift for your kids, this is an absolute steal for the price. And that's pretty much it. So, I've been Gadget Joe. This has been the Marvo CM420 3-in-1 gaming kit, an absolute heavyweight in terms of value. And until next one, goodbye.